Because I feel the tension from y'all. Y'all want me to do so well. I want to do so well for you. But let's relax and enjoy whatever the fuck happens. 'Cause I got my check.
Buried with the donkey. He's my favorite honky.
Now I probably got some other group pissed off at me because I said fruit. There's a different group to get pissed off at you in this country for everything you're not supposed to say. Can't say fruit, can't say faggot, can't say queer, can't say...
Comedians exist in a society, and that society is oftentimes, in fact, always evolving. And then what people have now started doing is they'll try and go back to a time when society was different, but then try and isolate the comedian and be like, look what the comedian was saying. You're like, yeah, but who is the comedian saying it to?
Cancel culture. Every single day there's a new headline about yet again another celebrity being canceled. It's stressful, it's annoying, and sometimes it's unnecessary, which is why I chose this topic. Hi, my name is Eva Kaponis, and I decided to dive into the world of cancel culture to answer my inquiry question, which was, should we cancel comedians for routines they performed before the 2000s, specifically the 70s through the 90s? I also found through my research other things like, is cancel culture even beneficial? So a quick backstory. I've been fixated with old SNL for a few years, and I think it is top-notch comedy. I started to notice when I showed people my age some skits, they would call some jokes within the show offensive, politically incorrect, crude, and just bad taste in comedy. At the same time, I noticed around me that social media would bring up my all-time favorite comedians, Steve Martin, and their sketches and just their regular routines from literally years ago, and saying that they're racist, homophobic. You get the gist. Side note, I have some pictures missing because I am moving and I'm giving them away, but I do have a whole wall of Steve Martin, so I love old comedy, if that helps. Now, I wasn't upset that they were my favorite comedians being brought to light in a bad way, but I was more bothered by the fact that it's been decades since these literal legends said or did that certain alarming thing, and most of the time, if those performers are still touring, they don't even have the same type of act or same sense of comedy. So given cancel culture is all around us now, I wanted to interview some newer comedians to see their view on canceling comedians from their older eras. And on top of that, I want to figure out if they have trouble performing in this comedy climate today. So after some back and forth emailing with the Funny Bone in Manchester, Connecticut, if you're not familiar, it's in the Buckland Mall, I was invited to come to see a show. On top of that, I was able to sit down and talk to two comedians and get their thoughts on this whole idea. Here are the interviews.
Right? I do. I think that, and I don't know the Gen X and the terms for it, but I think that people in general are highly offended or ready to be offended, and that's very scary. But I was born at a time when you didn't take things personal. You first, worked it through. Is it personal? Is it now? And immediately it's personal, and then immediately it's posted or tweeted. But when I grew up, it was different. In order to complain, when I was growing up, you either had to write a letter to corporate or to an editor or something like that. And that's a process. You're looking for the address, and you're writing a letter, and you're thinking it out. And so you had time to review. Is this serious enough? Where now it's right there at your fingertips. So I just think that it's too easy to complain. It's too easy.
Yeah, I think a lot. The world is pretty sensitive now, to me. People are just very sensitive. They take everything to heart. Everything. Just like with Dave Chappelle, his special. When they were like, oh, trans women. And it's like one of his closest friends was trans. And she ended up committing suicide. And it broke his heart because this was one of his closest friends. But just because he says something in the special about someone being trans doesn't mean that he doesn't love trans people. Right. You know what I mean? He just said what he said at that moment, but yet this is my friend and I love my friend. Right. You know what I mean?
I stay away from politics. Yeah. I always have, though. It's not a fear of cancel culture. It's just with my thing. It's my stuff is personal. It's about me and how I experience my kids and my life and things like that. So I don't have to address it as much. But when I reach out to politics or LGBT or anything, I am a little nervous. I'm like, okay, I want to be proper. I want to have the information. I want it to be funny because that's the first thing. But it has to be informative as well. It has to be correct.
It's not humor in everything, you know, like we have school shootings and certain things that are not at all humorous. But like, I think that like as a comic, you have to kind of, now we have to pick and choose what we say to not offend. Like now you offend so many different people, right? Like if you talk about someone being gay and you don't verbalize that right, or you don't get the, you know, him, hey, they,
right,
you know,
exactly.
right, then it's like, oh, you're canceled, when it's actually, it's new to us. It's new, right? So it's like we have to learn something to then make sure that we don't make a mistake in it, you know? So it does definitely take, to me, the fun and the art of it, right? Like, so I think that's definitely one thing. Of course, race is always a factor, right? Not as much because, you know, now everyone is just life in a melting pot. You know, everyone's mixed with something. That's my thing, right? But that can always still be a factor. Certain things in politics, you know, like with, you know, the Trump era and then like how aggressive that became. I think that's definitely scary, you know, like, but that doesn't mean to me that we shouldn't talk about it. I think that now we're at a point to where people should understand that just because my view is different doesn't mean I don't necessarily respect your view, right? You should be able to like have a conversation with someone and understand like, okay, you feel this way, I feel this way, but that doesn't mean that like either one of us is right or wrong. It's just we have a difference, right?
Exactly.
That drives me crazy. Is it?
Yeah.
You have to apply it to the era that it happened in.
Yes.
And so therefore, if we were thinking differently, it maybe wasn't as offensive.
Yep.
And my kids, I have new kids that say that's still terrible. No, you can't apply new rules to old
Exactly.
situations.
Yes, that's
When you do that now, has he corrected? How has he contributed?
Yeah,
You know,
that's
and
my whole project's about that because
Yeah.
I think that context is such a big thing with
Yes.
this stuff.
And it's overlooked.
Exactly, and I think that people just see a clip, like you were saying, like they just have it at their fingertips. People will see a clip and will just be
They
like,
want to
oh,
apply
that's wrong.
rules to this. And no, you have
Exactly.
to apply the understanding around it, definitely.
People don't understand when comics get up there and they talk, they're not just, it's not like just a rant. It's life, it's experiences, it's things that we've dealt with. If not us, maybe someone in our family, maybe a friend we know, right? So it's just like a bit, you create these bits in this entire set based off of just your life, your experiences, your stories, and things you've encountered.
Yeah, that was a lot of Richard Pryor stuff.
That's what I'm saying. And it's so like, if it's something that I'm experiencing, how am I wrong for expressing that, you know? So the thing about it is you have to know what you're getting in an individual. That's who Dave Chappelle is. And some things like, you know, just because it may be offensive doesn't mean that it shouldn't be heard. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's my thing. So like a lot of things that he talk about, you know, they're controversial, but they're matters and they're subjects that need to be discussed. They need to be brought to the open, right? Like to have people think like, whoa, you know, this or that. But I love Dave Chappelle. One of my favorite as well. And I love him for that fact that cancel culture for him is like, whatever, cancel me, right? Like you can cancel me, but you can't shut me up.
Right.
You know, I'm gonna still say what I want to say. This is who I am. This is how I express myself. You know, so that's the thing with stand up is really when we're up there, we're expressing, this is our opinions. You don't have to like it or agree with it, but it's how we feel. You know what I mean? Like we have a stage to be able to verbalize how we feel.
I think he's similar to George Carlin, is that they've always been these political people. They've always been that. And then with him, I love Dave Chappelle, but listen to the whole set. When I see people complaining, it's usually they're seeing a blur or an excerpt of it, and they're taking that and running with it. No, listen to the whole show, listen to the whole understanding, and then make a decision. I'm not saying change your decision, just listen, just be informed about the whole thing. And I love freedom of speech, but just be informed with it.
Exactly.
And then be informed with the power that it comes with, is it to just post something and tweet something and go viral and say terrible things. Just be informed. No, I think it's definitely beneficial. I just think there should be a process that goes with it.
Yeah.
Let's not just wake up and read a blurb and then attack people.
Right.
Again, be informed, be self-governed, and
Right.
there's a process with it.
Yeah, I think that definitely there should be like a learning curve with it, but there shouldn't be a...
It's very powerful, but with power comes, there's so self-governing with it.
Exactly.
That you do have the power, so let's make sure we're correct with it before we, say
Right,
things to
exactly.
other people.
That one can be tricky because it definitely depends on what they said in the past. But at the same time, it goes into, like you were saying, like what was the context of it. To me, it goes into, like, remember Kevin Hart in the Oscars? Like, years ago, he had did a joke about someone being gay, or a gay joke. And then all of a sudden now you don't want him to even host the Oscars. So it's like, all the good he's done, all the jokes he said in his career, he said one joke, and now he's not good enough to, perform at to basically host the Oscars.
No. I think we should look back to what we were doing then and apply it to that, and then look at what they've done since then. If they're still doing this, then that's one thing. But if they kind of dropped it and if they've done the work, if they've done the work to correct it, then we're human and give grace.
Yeah.
I always think that we should always give grace.
The problem is that people sit in their house all day and say things that are horrible and they're cruel. They bash people, they say all kind of things. Comics say it on stage, and it's like, oh, you're a horrible person. Just because we're on the stage saying it, but yet you're saying it at the dinner table with your family, right? So I don't really know if they should be canceled to a certain extent, because it's kind of like now, yes, that gay joke is probably extremely offensive. But when he said the joke, was it offensive? You know what I'm saying? Because now people are so much more sensitive about their sexuality and different things, right? But when he verbalized it, was it this huge, you know what I mean? Like wave of all these different things, you know? So I think it definitely depends on the context of it.
Do you have any last thoughts about this topic?
No, it's just wild to sit in it from where I am at the age I am. So I've seen the gamut of it, and it's just crazy. Again, just give some grace, and if they've corrected since then and done work or supported or changed their act, then obviously they have learned.
So for those of you who are watching who are going to grade me, even though I will quickly mention my updates through my presentation, I want to take this time to further speak on my second update. For this project, I sent out an anonymous Google form about people's views on my inquiry question. I reached out further on social media to get people that I'm friends with online. The only required question was their generation. Here was the general consensus. So Gen Z participants surprisingly broke stereotypes in my data, saying that jumping on someone's past to cancel them is not okay. Most say that it depends on the situation. This is interesting because Gen Z are usually the ones to bring it up on social media. Most Gen Z surveys say that if they've changed from a given point, there's no use to canceling them. So my Gen Y participants think that there needs to be a room for change. No one should jump on canceling anyone. They said that canceling is for us to hold more powerful people accountable. But the problem with this is that the line for what's problematic and what you don't agree with is very, very fine. Today's generation realizes what's right and wrong, but they don't understand issues that aren't acceptable now can't translate with the same feeling back then. The comedic climate was a completely different situation. And finally, my Gen X participants don't all agree on the idea of cancel culture, as a whole at least, but say that it should depend on the situation. If the actions being reviewed were physically harmful and abusive, it's an acceptable punishment. But if what's being circulated is a joke made years ago, it shouldn't matter whether they apologize or not. I got such good representation from Gen X, Y, and Z, but I didn't get anybody older than Gen X. So I decided to drive down to Plainville, Connecticut, and conduct my last interview with the oldest person I know, my great-grandma, Connie Francis. Here are her thoughts.
I was born Constance Cavalieri into an Italian family. I was born in June 3rd, 1927.
So how have you seen comedy changed over the years?
Radically. Comedy in my younger days was funny. The comedians made you laugh. The biggest shock I got into the new comedy was when I went to see a comedian, I can't remember his name, but I didn't understand one thing he was talking about because he used the F word. Every other word was the F word, and swore at the audience. And I thought, this is not comedy.
Okay, so I don't know how familiar you are with people like getting upset over like comedy right now. Like if SNL like has something about like something like a politician, people get upset, like all that stuff.
Yeah, I think it's too political.
Have you seen?
And I think it's political. I'm sorry.
You're good. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's too political. In my day, you didn't know what political party or what the comedian was affiliated with. He was just a funny man. If you ever sat through one of Bob Hope's or any of the old-time comedians, you would never have guessed what their political view was. Now it's a disgrace the way they make fun of the politicians, the words they use. I don't see anything funny, nothing at all.
So you've seen so many comedians through your lifetime.
Yeah.
So obviously comedy was different then to now, and what people could say in front of people.
Yeah.
Do you think that it's okay to go back to somebody's past and bring it up into light now?
Well, no. Why would you want to bring somebody's past up? If someone made a mistake and atoned for it, why would you bring it up? I see no reason for that.
So like somebody like Steve Martin or like Johnny Carson, if they said something off color, then some people will go back into that time and find the video and bring it up now and get upset.
I watched every Johnny Carson show from when he first came on. I watched the comedians Jay Leno. I don't recall ever them saying something off color. They were funny. That's my thing. Comedians should make you laugh. Their political views, their feelings, has nothing to do with comedy. I want to sit down and I want to laugh. I don't want to have to worry about what they're going to come up with next. Or
do you have from when you were younger, do you have a favorite comedian?
Do I what?
Like from when you were younger, do you have like a favorite comedian you would watch?
Oh, I used to watch Bob Hope. Oh, golly, I can't remember. Remember, I'm 95, right, Eva? There were a lot of them in the Milton Berle. The Milton Berle show was the funniest thing many years ago. And who's the one you like?
Steve?
Steve Martin. I liked him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was funny.
Yeah, he was.
Or he is. Yeah.
Well, people have been getting upset with what he did, like when he was younger. Like, remember King Tut?
Yeah.
People are getting upset now because he dressed up like he was Egyptian.
He was a comedian, and that was a funny skit. I can still remember it. Yeah.
So do you think, like, the idea of canceling somebody, so meaning, like, somebody maybe could get fired for it or they get a lot of hate for something they said, do you think that's okay then and now?
Well, the way I look at it is if I find them offensive, I just don't watch them. You may not find something offensive that I do. So I have a choice, watch it or listen to it or not. So if I choose not to, then I just turn it off.
Anything else?
No.
That's it?
No, that's it.
All right, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, except the fact that there isn't a comedian out there today that's funny. You can just use so many swear words in a sentence. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
Thanks.
Oh, you're welcome.
So what do you think? Is cancel culture beneficial for older acts? Is it even beneficial now? What are my thoughts? It's going to be a strong no. I'm very against cancel culture in comedy. Now, actions are different than words, so obviously if there's a physical event that happened in a performer's life, like for instance sexual assault, Bill Cosby, then obviously that's a whole other story. I'm strictly talking about comedy and what is said on stage. I don't condone any of that other stuff. However, on the stage, even the most off-color comic in the world shouldn't be canceled, in my opinion. There should 100% be a learning curve with this sort of thing, especially with older comedians. I mean, they grew up in a whole other world of comedy than it is today. And, you know, what was accepted then and laughed at them, you could never speak about it today. So rather than jumping on and penalizing them by canceling them and maybe blacklisting them, we should teach them about what's right and wrong today. At the end of the day, you can't control what comes out of somebody's mouth. You can only control how you handle it. So that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Seriously, this was so much fun. I'm a really big fan of old comedy, so this was such a fun topic to talk about and discuss. Thank you to the Funny Bone for allowing me to conduct the interviews. Thank you to Mr. Dubois, who lended me all the recording equipment that I used for the interviews at the Funny Bone. And thank you to everybody who participated in either the physical interview or the Google form. You guys really helped me out, seriously. And to the staff watching and grading me on March 16th, see you soon.